This is Faisal Al Saud, the king of Saudi Arabia from 1964 to 1975. In 1973, he did the unthinkable. He stopped oil export to the US and other Western nations for supporting Israel. Oil prices rose 300%. It climbed from $3 to $12 per barrel. The sudden oil embargo created shockwaves across the West. Cars lined up for miles at petrol stations in the US, and Europe plunged into economic chaos. The world realized a shocking truth. Oil was not just fuel, it was power, and the man who wielded that power was King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. But who was King Faisal? How did he rise to such influence? And why did he take on the West? And what really happened to him in the end? King Faisal Al Saud was born in 1906 into the powerful House of Saud. He was not just another royal figure. He was a statesman, a strategist, and a deeply religious leader. From a very young age, Faisal was exposed to diplomacy. At just 13 years old, he was sent on international missions, representing Saudi Arabia abroad. Over the years, he gained a reputation as a serious and a disciplined leader, very different from the stereotypical image of oil-rich monarchs. When Faisal became the king in 1964, Saudi Arabia was still developing. Faisal introduced major reforms, modern education, infrastructure, and economic planning, while still preserving Islamic values. But his legacy would not be defined by development alone. It would be defined by confrontation. King Faisal was one of the strongest supporters of the Palestine cause in the Arab world. For him, the issue was not just political, it was religious and moral. He saw the conflict with Israel as a struggle for justice and dignity in the Muslim world. After the creation of Israel in 1948, and especially after the Six-Day War in 1967, Arab nations were humiliated. Israel had defeated multiple Arab armies and occupied large territories. King Faisal believed that military defeat could be reversed, not just with weapons, but with economic power, and that power was oil. In October 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Israel faced a coalition of Arab nations led by Egypt and Syria. The United States and several Western nations openly supported Israel, supplying weapons and aid. That's when King Faisal made a bold move. Saudi Arabia, along with other OPEC nations, announced an oil embargo against countries supporting Israel, especially the United States and its allies. Oil production was cut, exports were restricted. The message was clear: if you support our enemy, you will not get our oil. The world was not prepared for this sudden oil embargo. The impact in the United States was immediate and severe. Fuel shortages spread across the country. Petrol stations ran dry. Long queues formed, sometimes stretching for kilometers. The government introduced rationing. People could only buy fuel on certain days based on their license plates. Speed limits were reduced to conserve fuel. Factories slowed down. Inflation surged. For the first time, Americans felt vulnerable, not because of war, but because of energy and dependence. King Faisal had exposed a critical weakness. Europe was hit just as hard, if not harder. Many European economies were heavily dependent on the Middle Eastern oil. Industries slowed, transportation costs skyrocketed, and economic growth stalled. Countries began scrambling for alternatives: coal, nuclear energy, and new oil suppliers. The oil embargo triggered what became known as the 1973 oil crisis, a turning point in global economic history. It wasn't just about fuel anymore. It was about control of the global economy. After 1973, Western nations, especially the United States, realized that they could not allow such a vulnerability again. There were serious discussions and contingency plans within NATO about securing oil supplies by force if necessary. Some reports suggest that military plans were drafted to seize oil fields in Saudi Arabia and neighboring regions in case of another embargo. The idea was simple. If oil could be used as a weapon, then it might have to be taken by force. But these plans were never executed. Why? The risks were enormous. Invading Saudi Arabia could have triggered a wider war, destabilize the entire Middle East, and possibly draw in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The cost of such a move would be simply too high. Faisal bin Musaid was King Faisal's nephew. He was studying in the US for many years. He was an alcoholic and a drug addict. He returned to Saudi Arabia in March 1975 to meet his uncle. The king meets his people at an open forum in his palace for some days of a month. Musaid was supposed to meet his uncle there. On the day of the meeting, Musaid walked up to meet the king. When the king came closer, Musaid shot him at a close range. King Faisal later died in the hospital. Some claim that Musaid was recruited by the CIA and sent to Saudi Arabia with a mission to kill his uncle. The CIA was probably able to control him by a secret drug and his American girlfriend, Christina Surma. It's important to note that there is no publicly confirmed evidence proving CIA's involvement. The official version remains that it was an internal act. After King Faisal's death, a new phase began. Saudi Arabia strengthened its ties with the United States. One of the most significant outcomes was the rise of the Petrodollar system. Under this agreement, oil would be sold globally in US dollars alone. In return, Saudi Arabia received security guarantees and economic cooperation. This system helped stabilize the global oil market, but it also strengthened the dominance of the US dollar in international trade. The world has changed. Oil was no longer just a weapon. It became part of a financial system that shaped global power. King Faisal remains one of the most influential leaders in modern Middle Eastern history. He proved that power does not always come from armies. Sometimes it comes from resources, strategy, and timing. His 1973 oil embargo reshaped global politics, exposed Western vulnerabilities, and changed how nations think about energy security. But his story also raises deeper questions. Can economic power be used as a weapon again? And what happens when global systems depend too heavily on a single resource? King Faisal's legacy is not just history, it is a warning. If you like this video, please subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.